Hello everyone and welcome back to Ruby Lessons on Codecademy. So in the last few lessons we were mainly talking about how to use Ruby more efficiently, and we also mentioned refactoring. So in today's lesson and this whole section is all about refactoring. So what is refactoring? We learned that refactoring is the process by which we improve a code structure, appearance and/or performance without modifying its overall behavior. So sometimes it can be just appearance, sometimes it can be appearance and efficiency, and sometimes it can be just efficiency. So it might look it might look worse than it actually did before, but it might work faster, so it depends. The code in the editor, so what we are given here, is a Ruby method, first n primes, that takes a number n, so any number, and generates a list of the first n prime numbers. Unfortunately, our poor author hasn't yet mastered all the tools available in Ruby. Poor author. But we can fix that. Instructions. Let's get to work. Let's submit code to start refactoring this monster of a program. So let's just have a glance at it at first. So we have verbose equals nil. They will explain what that is later on. Require prime, that's a module. So basically a module is like a library where it takes instructions from. Seeing as they will be covered, I'm not going to go into too much detail for these two. So define, so this is our function, and then we call that function or method. In Ruby actually this is a method, and then we call that method with 10. So unless it's an integer, then it continues on. If it isn't, then nothing actually happens. So it just continues on even if it is. Okay, let's just start the lesson actually, because I'm pretty sure that we're going to go through it anyway. So, to be or not to be. First up, on line 14, our hapless programmer has decided to check whether prime array has a value of using .nil method, which returns true if a value is nil and false otherwise. So this isn't a bad idea, and he has the one-line if statement right. So it's a one-line if statement, but there's a faster way of doing this. We can use conditional assignment to set prime array to an empty array rather than bother with the .nil check. Question mark means yes or no, or true or false. So this is just an example of how the conditional assignment can be used. As you can see here, it's like the or and an equal to sign. So what we need to do is just fix line 14, which is over here. We just need to add the or operator. And I am going to comment this out, and if it doesn't let me, I'm just going to erase it, but that's kind of annoying. It should really let you do that because it has no effect on the program, but yeah. So all you need to do for this one is just make the single equal to have the or operator in front of it to make it a conditional assignment. So if you remember, a conditional assignment assigns something to a variable as long as that variable is equal to nil or there's nothing in that variable. So moving on, omit needless words. So if you've taken a writing class, you might have come across strunk and whites the elements of style. I have never come across that, but there you go, you can see the link in the bottom left corner. So one of their suggestions is to omit needless words, and it applies just as much to writing Ruby as writing essays. So in writing essays you might be given a word limit, so for example 1,000 words, but you've gone over that limit. You can always shorten it, like sometimes is not, you can shorten it to isn't. That's a simple way of shortening it. Otherwise you can just remove whole sentences because you're just repeating yourself. So in Ruby you can do a similar thing. So there are two control structures to change here. The unless on line 6, so that's over here, and the if on line 10. Okay, so all we need to do is just change those. So how we do that is by unless n is integer, do this, and we don't need return. We actually, yes, I am not too sure. I think that we can just remove the return, but yeah, I think that that's going to be the next lesson for the return. So let's just leave it for now. Then we also have the if n is that, then we want to do this. Return that. I believe it's the other way around. So do that if that. And the same here. Return that unless that. And there we go. That should be indented. For some reason with spaces. I would not recommend using spaces for indentation. And there we go. So how you do this is just by saying do this if this, just like in English. So if you wanted to scrunch up a paper, if I don't know, your number was less than 3, then you would write it down like that. And in Ruby you do it similarly. You return this if this. So quite simple. I don't need to go into too much detail because we have covered this beforehand. So moving on. Less is more. Great work, this code looks better already. We can remove even more, however. There's one return statement in this code that we can change from explicit to implicit. So recall that Ruby will automatically return the value of the last expression it evaluates in a method. So find the unnecessary return keyword and remove it. So let's find those returns do need to be there, and I do believe it's this one because that's at the very end, and that should be fine. There we go. Moving on. The Rubyist's loop. Excellent, now we'll want to attack that funky looking for loop. Let's go ahead and replace it with a nice end.times. So I'm kind of going quite quickly through this because we have already covered it into more detail in the previous 4 or 5 lessons that we had on Zen of Ruby, which is, I think, enough. So if you do have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. I don't mind it. But I just don't feel the need to go through it into as much detail as we have. So let's find the for loop. Here's the for loop. In other languages, such as Python or C++, maybe this would be acceptable. But in Ruby, there are faster ways of doing this. So in 1 to n. So we can just do n.times over here and n.times. And then we can use this as our block. We can take this and put it in here. That should be fine. There we go. So what this is going to do is repeat this as many times as n is. So if n was 5, it would repeat this 5 times. If n was 10, which I do believe it is, yes. So n is going to be 10, it's going to repeat this 10 times. Which is quite good. So moving on. Final push. Nearly there. To finish this up, let's take out the dot push and use the concatenation operator instead. So if you don't remember, concatenation just means adding 2 strings together, so sticking one string to the other. Or in an array, it can mean adding one element into the array. Replace the call to dot push with the lesser than operator, or concatenation operator. So let's find that. Here we go. There we go. That should be fine. And in concatenation, we are concatenating the prime numbers in this case. So you have an array of the number 2, then you concatenate the number 3, concatenate the number 5. As you can see, they're separate elements in this case. But if it was a string, you would be just sticking them onto each other. And nice work. Fantastic, you really improved that code, and all it took was a little Ruby know-how, what we covered in the last section. Check out the code in the editor to the right. It's even more streamlined than what we had before. So there are different ways of doing things again. If you remember, we had that weird looking verbose equals nil on line 1. This allowed us to use the old style prime.new from Ruby 1.8 without the interpreter yelling at us. So it's like importing things from old styles. So in Ruby 1.9, however, we use prime.instance instead. So let's find that. Here we go, prime.instance. And the array magic is already built in. We don't have to create prime array or loop through it ourselves. Then again, we'd used .instance from the start. You wouldn't have gotten to do all that cool refactoring. Oh well. So it's saying that if they made us do it like this, then we wouldn't have learned anything. The new code is on lines 8 to 10. So 8 to 10. That's quite nice. because as you can see, this is a much shorter program than this over here. So this is 18 lines. I guess we could shorten it. So let's just see. Oop, I did not mean to remove that much. So this is 11 lines. And this one, it is 10 lines. So that's 1 line shorter. Actually, it's 8 lines, seeing as these comments don't count as anything, and there were no comments in the previous one. So as you can see, it's 2 lines less, and it does the exact same thing. So feel free to play around with the code for as long as you like, then click Save and Submit Code to complete this project. So submit code. If you do decide to try things out for yourself, do feel free to ask me in the comments for help. I will gladly help you as soon as possible, of course. But other than that, yeah, thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye.